Recently, Cloud Imperium Games hosted their annual Citizens Convention. While I only have one video on it and it's not very positive, Star Citizen is one of the games I play the most. So I was cautiously excited about this year's convention, and I will say I wasn't disappointed. That being said, it did leave a little concern. Now, this isn't going to be a full overview of the entire convention, more so the things I'm excited and worried about. The first of this 2-day convention was meh. They talked about new biomes and flora generation tech, which was pretty cool. They also talked about potential fauna, like the giant sandworm, which is pretty sick. To close the first day, they showed us more Squadron 42, Star Citizen single-player campaign. I think it was really cool of them to give us a live demo, even though it wasn't super smooth. The game looks pretty good visually, though turret gameplay isn't exactly riveting. From a presentational standpoint, I think they nailed it. The motion capture and the actors, they all did an amazing job. That being said, it did sort of confirm my suspicions that Squadron 42 is just going to be a very fancy Call of Duty campaign, which isn't necessarily bad. They said it would be coming in 2026, so yeah, Squadron 42 is still just 2 years away. Hopefully CIG can clean the game up and ensure that it launches as polished as possible. A lot is riding on this game's success. But that was day 1. Day 2 is where most of the juicy stuff was. And I will say, I was blown away by the presentation. They showed off crafting, base building, and how this will integrate into the wider game economy. Even more exciting were discussions around Star Citizen's 1.0 release, which was pretty much a meme up to this point. So before I get into why I'm a little worried, let's first talk about that 1.0 panel. They talked about what exactly Star Citizen would become, the type of game it would be. CIG is aiming for a game with a healthy balance of different professions. From mercenaries to traders, pirates to raiders, bounty hunters to explorers, the whole shebang, which I think is a reasonable approach. A game on the scale of Star Citizen is not in a position where it can just appeal to a small niche of players. The game necessitates the capacity to support filthy casuals like myself, as well as professionals who will make this game their entire lives. And it seems CIG understands that. This will be a game for people who just want to do some casual space trucking, as well as folks trying to set up a home, even for players who want to join a massive player-run organization, and we'll talk about that later on. The point is, there will be a wide variety of professions and progression loops, as well as goals to reach. But no point showing a play without the stage. Let's talk about the universe. So for 1.0, Star Citizen will have 5 star systems. Stanton, which we already have, Pyro, which is currently in testing and should be out late this year if not early next year, Nyx, which they're supposedly working on, then Castra, another high-sec system like Stanton, and then the one I'm most excited for, Terra, which is basically the most important system in the Star Citizen universe beyond Sol, or, the solar system, the one Earth is in. Now, obviously, there has been some discussion around the fact that back in the day, Star Citizen was supposed to have more than 100 star systems at launch. And, most Star Citizen players with even half a brain cell know that this would be ridiculous. The star systems they were talking about back then are primitive compared to the ones we have today. The 4.0 patch promises to help with a lot of the technical issues surrounding the game and should pave the way for future star systems to not take nearly as long as Pyro. I think 5-star systems is a realistic goal, and it should be far more achievable within a reasonable time frame. And right there, I was excited. With all that CIG had showed up to this point, it seemed like a 1.0 could be here in 3 to 4 years. And then they talked about the endgame, which is one of the places where I got really worried for a few different reasons. But another thing I was worried about, and something I didn't mention yet, is base building. It's because it's connected to that endgame system. So what about base building? Well, for start, I was blown away by it. It was by far the thing I was most excited for out of this entire convention. Based on what we saw, it seems like you'll be able to build anything from a small little hamlet in the woods to a large industrial complex or base of operation for large player organizations. Maybe even large towns or small player-run cities. It all looked amazing from here. This creates opportunity for conflict over resources, which would lead to small conflicts between groups of players, or even system-wide interstellar wars between player organizations. These bases also connect to resource collection, mining, and even crafting. These crafting mechanics are also pretty cool, as you can craft anything from guns to actual ships. Things you craft can then be put up for sale for other players to buy. I'm assuming you can even set up your own ship-making business to make ships and sell them to other players who might not be able to get those ships easily. This resource gathering and trade itself will affect the broader game economy. If a lot of players are making bases, then maybe the demand for something like titanium is gonna go up, thus the price is gonna skyrocket. This creates opportunities for dedicated trader professions. So overall, this is pretty exciting stuff. An extension of this system is the new space stations large player organizations can construct as a daunting endgame goal. Space stations that seem to truly be orbital cities, rivaling if not exceeding the size of the ones currently in game. It's amazing stuff. So what's my worry? Well, for one, seeing all this made me realize that 1.0 is definitely not 3 to 4 years away. It's more like 5 to 7, maybe even a decade, which, you know, kinda sucks. Another thing is the question of how CIG intends to monetize this new base and station building system. Ideally, they'll only sell cosmetics. You know, how our base looks, inside and out. They can sell furniture and decorations for the inside and paints and textures for the outside. Players should not be able to circumvent the work it takes to build a base. Now, back in the day, apparently CIG sold land claims on the pledge store, and I'm really hoping that's not coming back. I don't like the idea that players can just buy their way into a plot of land instead of doing the work to earn it in game. I'd actually prefer if land claims weren't permanent and something you need to sustain, or at least you need to pay for protection. I also think if you're a criminal with enough offenses, you should be able to lose your land claim as well. It would actually give criminals a reason to set up in low instead of high-sec systems. Honestly, I just want this to be fair for everyone regardless of how much they can drop on this game. No paying to progress, no paying to win, and no paying for an advantage. And I know the whales won't like to hear that, but still. Hopefully they also don't monetize base module or defense systems. Ideally, the largest bases and stations will be owned and operated not by the people with the deepest pockets, but by the people who've put in the most work. But with Star Citizen, maybe that's wishful thinking. It's clear CIG doesn't really concern themselves with fairness, but one can still hope. Of course, these concerns are mostly for high-sec systems like Stanton, as in places like Pyro, supposedly, you can just choose a spot of land and start building. Of course, Pyro is really dangerous, so it's a fair trade-off. But for systems like Stanton and Terra, you'd have to buy the claims in-game, and if we're lucky, only in-game. Another concern I have is with the in-game orbital stations and player organizations. Based on what I'm seeing, it seems like these stations are going to be near impossible to knock out of orbit. And while it definitely shouldn't be easy, these stations should not be permanent. Different dominant player organizations should rise and fall, but based on what we're seeing right now, it seems like there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 massive player organizations that can't be stopped. They might become super oppressive and ruin the game for others, and if you don't want your experience to suck, you just join them, which would only make them stronger. There needs to be limits on these player orgs. No organization should become unstoppable. But who knows, maybe I'll be one of the rebels fighting against the player-run empire. Anyways, that's it for me. Like and subscribe. I'm the Evernight Writer, and have a wonderful night.